Okay, now I thought I'd attack a question that's even a kind of, it's funny, mostly these questions that we've just done are kind of semantical questions and just questions of interpretation. But I thought I'd talk about something a little more difficult, and something I usually avoid. But you're supposed to be an advanced class. So I tell myself, okay, let's treat them like an advanced class. And this is understanding Jing a little bit. I mean, I hate, I'm so cautious about doing this because I can't stand to see students, sort of saying, I'm going to show a little Jing here, and I'm going to show a little Jing here, and a little Jing. This is, it's usually so clumsy and amateurish that it's quite offensive. So I hate giving anybody the impression that but this doesn't mean that you can't practice what creates Jing, not in the context of the form. You don't have to be plugging it into the form all the time. So we have three kinds of Jing: CHANSIJING, TING JING, CHANSIJING. Okay, all of those are capable of delivering force, but all of them are connected to the concept of a vibration. Okay, that means by vibration, I mean it's simply something has to move one way and the other way. Now, for instance, take CHANSIJING Jing, the act of expanding, let's say. So you feel like you're expanding. Well, if all you're doing is just simply getting bigger and just pressing into your opponent, this is not Jing. This is just expand. This is just pressure. But as soon as it becomes something that contracts and then expands over some sort of definite, wavelength and through some definite speed, this can produce something. In other words, if you have some kind of ball that's flexible, and you just push it against the opponent, it doesn't have nearly as much power as if you release it and then push it again and allow this expansion and contraction to occur. You allow this buildup of Jing. So in other words, Jing is always connected with some kind of reversal. Now, as I say, that one is fairly easy to understand, and you can also sort of measure how powerful it could be. Now take TING JING. TING JING is a little harder to see because you say, oh, if I'm going to, use TING JING, that just refers to the changes of insubstantial and substantial going through the body, and it feels like I can just kind of, for instance, let's take the elementary concept of a sort of karate chop like this, okay? Now, obviously, you would not put out your arm and go like this. It's just instinctive. Whenever somebody wants to really deliver more force, they always reverse it first. Even if you take someone and say, oh, well, okay, I'll start way up here. And then I can just have all this distance to create all this force. Even someone who starts here, if he's any good at what he does, you'll see him always do this first. In other words, there's always this reversal. So there's always this kind of wave. Anything that has any joints whatsoever is capable of conducting this wave, and it sort of implies its reversal. In other words, if I have a nunchuck and let's just take a straight pole first, just a stick, and I bring it up like this and bring it down, well, half of the stick just goes in concert with the other half. Just swings up and swings down. But because it's got a joint, as it goes up, it breaks at this joint this way, and then it swings back this way and breaks the other way, and does like this. In other words, you have induced a much more powerful wave than if you just have the straight stick and move it back and forth. But as I say, anyone, even with a straight stick, will try to induce something of a wave by doing this. And of course, if you make some relaxation in your wrist, then you have sort of created the other, sort of made yourself into a sort of jointed thing that connects the stick. So even that will make the stick more powerful. All right. So the ultimate of this is the whip, which has joints everywhere, which is infinite joints, so that it'll transmit the finest wave possible. Now, when you use Taijichuan, or you fighting or something like that, you must understand a lot of the things that you do may originate in the legs, and for this we must have this very powerful action coming in the waist and legs, and this can only really happen through CHANSIJING. But that doesn't mean that there's a complete CHANSIJING happening in the arms. For instance, this is what I want you to sort of test. If you take your, let's go through the process of learning how to make a chop, okay? So take an arrow stance, put your weight on the left leg, let's say, so I'll have this all correct. And now realize you're going to have to get complete control of this action of the waist, in which you close the qua. Doesn't really matter which way we start. Which you close the qua, and when you close the qua, you feel like the foot is trying to turn this way on the floor. It's trying to twist inward, but it won't twist. So that reflects back. Now, any force can happen, and you can sort of disconnect yourself from it. The whole trick in making jing work is to retain your connection to the root until the strike actually occurs. In other words, I could just say, oh, I'll just make this flicker with my waist, and then I'll just let the arm pick it up. So it actually picked up that wave, and it actually transmitted it. But what happened was, I just did this thing with I felt the foot for a second, but then I just let that transfer up here, and then I just let it sort of, emanate out. I want you to feel like up to the very last second, you still feel the connection with the foot. So let's try this. First, let's be clear about what we don't want. Don't move the waist at all. Just take the arm back and go like this. As fast as you can. That's about it, okay? Now, think, okay, I'm going to open the qua and close the qua. This naturally is going to swing my arm back and forth. All right, now, try to feel the difference, and this is the really critical point, the difference between breaking your connection before the strike happens. And I want you to do it deliberately, so you will understand what the error is. You can sort of make a flicker with the waist, but then just sort of forget about it, and then let it, chop it. That's going to be fairly powerful. But what you want is to feel like up to the very last second, you're completely connected with the foot. So the foot is always trying to turn on the floor. It doesn't have this initial boom, boom, and then it just sort of stops and waits while the thing manifests. But it's always connected to your chop. So to the very last second, this is how you get real jing in your movement. So I want everybody to just kind of play around with that concept for a moment.
So, Bob, when you're talking about this flexation, this rotation on the foot connected to this strike, so even the reversal is still connected.
Of course. Everything's connected. It's totally connected. Just remember, your waist is the handle of the whip. If you've ever used a whip, you'll be familiar with what I'm talking about. With a whip, it's much more instinctive to do it right, which means you stay connected. You sort of feel the handle and feel the strike connected to the handle. But you could obviously just kind of go like this and then just sort of stop and let the thing like flop out in front of you. But no, you want to feel like you're reaching out and still pushing that wave through it, okay? So this is what's happening here. You want to feel like this action. And again, this is just lifting your arm up to here instead of having it down here. So when it's up here, then it opens it. So you open the qua, close the qua. Now, if you really understand this, you will understand the gradual development of this from something that looks like this to something that looks like this. And you will be able to show everything in between. Now, the first one was very slow. So when it's very slow, I feel the connection to the root, right? Connected. Now I feel it reverse. Okay, so again, you constantly want to feel the foot trying to turn back and forth on the floor. It's not pressure on the floor. That's not your root. Your root is this feeling of trying to turn. So When it opens, you feel it connected to the hand, and then it closes, and you feel it connected. So it opens and closes. Now, as you relax, now, first of all, you should notice if you duplicate this exactly and try to just go faster, you'll end up stiffening your arm. You don't want the arm to be stiff. You want it to be completely loose. So what you have here is this connection. Now make it go a little faster. So you definitely feel like it's very disconnected in terms of time from the final strike. The faster you go, the more jing you have, the more the feeling is of, how can I put it? I don't want to, the feeling is a disconnection in time. But the whole thing happens faster in terms of its entire, speed to actually execute. But you feel like the waist is very separate. The waist does its thing and then the arm does its thing, but that does not disconnect from the root. Up to the very last second, you want to feel like the root, when your hand reaches its lowest point, you want to feel like you are still feeling like the foot trying to turn this way. So then, like I say, every time it reverses, you want to feel that reversal in the manifestation here. Now, this is kind of the simplest way to use CHANSIJING, which is we're just using CHANSIJING in the legs. And then it's directed by the waist. So the waist directs all this force through the upper body. But we're not using CHANSIJING in the arm. We are simply using TING JING. We're simply allowing it to be jointed. So as it's jointed, it has a capability of producing more power. But notice, when I go slowly, I don't want to go, the slower I go, the more connected in terms of immediacy the wave is. It means if I'm going slowly, as soon as I feel like my quad opens, and now the foot is trying to turn, if you look down in a counterclockwise way, as the quad opens, you want to feel like that connection connects to your hand. You don't want to feel it's like this. You feel it connect directly this way. And then you reverse it. So you feel the reverse immediately have effect on the hand. Takes it one way, reverses, goes the other way. Yes.
I was just thinking if you do it right, you'd look like Baumgartner.
Who?
Pitcher. The pitcher.
Oh. Yeah, well, the way a pitcher pitches is certainly a study in how to produce the maximum ting jing from your arm. I mean, that's not a bad point to make. If you watch these slow motion things of the pitcher, but they're disconnecting everything. So they're sacrificing everything for this maximum amount of ting jing in the arm. And in fact, I think my wife will support me if I say that the modern tennis technique has gone more in that direction of having more freedom and looseness in the arm when you make a strike instead of keeping it more stiff. So it is gradually evolved in the way of making more and more use of ting jing. But of course, this means, even for a tennis player, that his strike had better come from his legs. Because he is not going to be, by doing it in a more loose jointed way, he's not going to have power unless he has that power manifesting from the legs. And then it can transmit through this way. So now, again, be sure you notice that this is simple because it's CHANSIJING in the legs, but it is not CHANSIJING in the arm.